Hey everyone, welcome to The Next Level, a podcast from the Team Performance Institute. Here we provide actionable insights on modern leadership and team development, driving higher levels of organizational performance and life empowerment. I'm your host, John Sanchez. Join me and my team as we take you on the journey to the next level. Is it bad that I love my own intro so much? I'm just the intro like fires me up. I don't know what's wrong with me, but every time I hear that, it fires me up. But now I realize it's wrong. It's Jonathan Sams, Jonathan Sanchez, here at the Next Level. Jonathan, thanks as always for being here.
Thanks, John, for being here as well, as always.
This is great. Jonathan's office is right down the road, so we get to do this. Like, it's probably a 5-10 minute drive from where we live in the same area, work in the same area, and we've had a lot of fun. And honored to have you here. We want to riff today on an issue that is relevant and current, or as current as of right now. It is September of 2025, mid-September, September 15th. We had a really wild week last week.
Yeah, we sure did. We had the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Yep.
We had the when it didn't happen last week, but the news hit relating to the murder of that Ukrainian girl.
Yep.
On the subway. You had something that was very close to you and your family.
Yeah, right after. So Charlie Kirk was on 9/10, correct? 9/11, we had a scare, a gunman scare at the Naval Academy, which turned out not to be actually a real threat, but it was one of those, seems like an internal launched internet scare that created a lockdown, a very scary 5-6 hours.
And your son attends the Naval Academy.
Yeah, with my son there. So that was wild. It was national news like right away, and we had kids, hiding or locked into their rooms. And
it got scarier because a helicopter came in and air flighted somebody out.
Yeah, there's actually a shooting in reaction to that. A midshipman did get shot, unfortunately. So yeah, it's just been a really weird, really kind of wild week, if you will, of all these things that have come out. And what I've noticed in the aftermath, well, like all things, it was absolutely awful in the moment. Charlie Kirk, I think, was probably one of the worst things you see it live, you see the videos, and they're just awful.
All of my kids have seen it.
And it's
unintentionally.
Unintentionally. Some things you just I don't think we need to see that type of stuff. So I hope, or at least shield our children from it. And it's a bit awful. And in the moment, it gets very emotional and very tough. There was some really, really, what do you want to call them? The bifurcation of America seems to have really split on the issue, where people went in two very separate extreme sides to the argument. Some people were obviously really sad, and it made America really sad to see that this happened. And then there's some people that went the opposite direction, and they were actually thankful, applauding, happy, that celebrating that this actually happened. And unfortunately, in the political environment we live in, with our cell phones and everything, that's just going to happen. Like, that is now where we stand as an organization, as a country, as a world, as life. I want to look at this a week out through the lens of leadership, if we could. We have the woman who was stabbed. Innocently, just stabbed on mass transit.
Charlotte.
Yeah, which is wild, because it makes everybody scared, right? That can happen to anybody. There was the Naval Academy, and apparently, if you look into this has been happening on campuses across America, where there's been a lot of these things. A couple of my friends said, yeah, this happened to my kids' college as well. And it's been really to hear your child locked down. By the way, just as a side note, really proud of the way that he handled that. It was really cool to listen to him and
Your son, Jonathan.
yeah, my son Jonathan go through it. He's a junior at the Naval Academy right now. Just really proud of the way that he handled himself, conducted himself. He was not only looking out for himself, he was looking out for others. And they locked him initially. They went locked down to the rooms, and they moved him to another area. So, but he was like always like hyper vigilant and always on alert. And they were getting all these different, messages were coming in from all over the place. And it was really messy. And I was on the phone with him pretty much the entire time, helping coach him through in the best way that I could. And it was great that we have the relationship that he could call me and he felt comfortable calling me and telling me what's going on. An absolute rock star in that as well was my wife, Anya, who was also on the phone and coaching him through it all. And, as a family, it was awful, but I was very proud of how he handled it. At the aftermath, like a day or two later, it really hit me. I was like, ooh, this is awful. And it hit me on the aftermath of Charlie Kirk and all the stuff that went down with him. But I want to look at it through the lens of leadership, because we are going to have more of these. Unfortunately, we're going to have incidents in our lives. We're going to have incidents as leaders in the community, leaders at your companies, all these things that are going to pop up, and they're going to pop up out of nowhere. Like this came out of really virtually nowhere. How do we react in a proper way? How do we consume all that's out there? Because it's out there on every social media platform available. My kids are getting it through Instagram. I was picking it up through X. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere. It's just floating out everywhere. How do you bring these terrible incidents into your, what is your system? And then how do you react in the moment properly? And then how do we as a country, or how do we use this to develop ourselves, develop character, move from this better than we're recognizing the reality and the terribleness of the incidents themselves. I'm not saying that we discount any of that. That is all real, but to walk away from it and in the best way that we can to help us maybe hopefully avoid some of it in the future, mitigate any of the risk that's out there for this to happen. Maybe you can't even do that. I don't know. I'm kind of stuck right now trying to figure out, how do we do that? How do we, because I think we all have a moral obligation personally for betterment, for using this and to help others, to be in service to others through everything that's around us. And oftentimes on this podcast, we talk about the good things that we've been given, the great things that we've been given, the gifts that we have, and how do we use those? Well, maybe one of the gifts is being able to prepare ourselves for when things like this go down, that we are in a better place mentally, that we are in a better place physically, spiritually, that we can turn to others and help them. So I couldn't think of anybody better than Jonathan Sams, who's somebody I turn to when I am down.
I know you think about these things a lot, and we talk about these kinds of, not necessarily these things, but a lot of things on the character of people and how to address adversity and opportunity. So last week was also the 24th anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah.
Which was traumatic to the country. And after 9/11, I'm old enough to remember that people would say the world has changed. That's what people were saying. At that point in my life, I'd already been deployed to the Middle East 4 times. I'd already seen conflict. Yeah. And I looked at him and said, the world hasn't changed. You're just now becoming aware of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing I'll say is this is the same exact world that existed exactly a week ago today. The world hasn't changed. You're just more aware of it. Yeah. And I think that awareness is important, because that helps us to be cognizant and to keep our heads in all circumstances. If you think the world exists in a utopia, and then are suddenly shocked with reality, you won't know how to respond to it. You'll be very reactive. Mm-hmm. But if you understand that there are going to be troubling times, there are going to be crises, and that should not change who you are one way or the other, then you can better address these things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think about, we raised our kids, 7 kids here in Southwest Ohio, and as each of them went on to college, I kind of talked to each of them individually and said, you have been living in a bubble. We created this bubble for you.
Right.
Not completely insulated. Life happens. They all went to, and they're all part of the real world too. But like, you're going to realize when you go out into the world that the world is a little bit different, and you're going to have to quickly, just not. You're going to have to work on yourself a little bit inside that. You're going to be you might be a little bit shocked.
Yeah.
Because you stepped out of that bubble. I think most Americans kind of live in this bubble, right? Where like you've been over the Middle East multiple times. I've seen real evil, and like 9/11 was like, well, it's here. And it's here for our generation for the first time. I mean, go back to the 40s when we were bombed in Pearl Harbor. It was like that hit, and all of America was united. And on September 12th, 2001, America was pretty united around what was going on and what we could do, how we could pull together as a country. I think it's probably the most patriotic day that I've experienced. But I like that idea that it is not changed, that it is real. If you go back in history through all of history and just read it, it's pretty bloody. It's pretty brutal. It's the reality of human nature in a lot of ways, that there's a lot of darkness. A
lot of light too.
A lot of light. So we focus on the light here. I mean, that,
right.
I to a fault, I am overly positive. Like,
darkness cannot withstand light. That's the truth.
That's right.
Darkness exists only in the absence of light. As soon as there is a glimmer of light, then the darkness recedes every time.
Yeah.
So one thing is to be the light. The other thing, about being aware. So you and I were sitting in a restaurant, Golden Lamb, and out of your peripheral vision, I've thought about this, not just from the physical side of it, that we were sitting there and an older woman tripped and fell down the stairs, and you were up and by her side before I even recognized what happened. Why? Because you had situational awareness that you had learned. That situational awareness is that bad things can happen. When you see that bad thing, accept the reality of it immediately and then respond to it. Right? That didn't just happen. And that's not just a physical rule, and it's not just about an older lady falling downstairs. It is about being aware of the reality of the world and being able to respond to it. And so I think that applies not just to what we do in small matters, but how we address big matters in our lives too.
Yeah. Yeah, I do remember that. I think you kicked my chair out and said, go help that lady. So let's talk about that. So it's a good example. It's kind of funny because I look at that and I'm like, oh, that was just very natural, right? Like I kind of saw it happen. It was a little bit of a step up, and I saw her struggling, and then I saw her start to go, and I was like, boop, and I happened to be the closest to her. I'm not trying to take like, oh, look at me up. But
no, you didn't then either. But I'm just saying you responded immediately before I even recognized what happened. You were beside.
Yeah. So let's go through that lens and think, how do we then as humans, like, get ourselves prepared for tough events in the world?
Like you just said, you have to be prepared, right? Mm-hmm. Because challenging things are going to happen. And so, my 4 areas that I think that we have to be prepared on mm-hmm. always. Mm-hmm. You always have to be mentally prepared for crisis. Mm-hmm. But you have to accept the reality of what's happening mm-hmm. and then keep your head as you go through it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You always have to be emotionally prepared, because a lot of people panic, and a lot of people that the emotions will cause them to deny the reality of what's going on. Mm-hmm. You have to be physically prepared, because sometimes that crisis is happening to you individually, and you have to be strong enough to withstand it. So, for example, I've had cancer multiple times. If I wasn't physically strong, then I would not have been able to withstand it. Mm-hmm. One of my sayings is you have to be able to survive it to be cured. And what I mean is you have to survive the treatment and the sickness itself mm-hmm. to be cured. And the last thing, you have to be prepared, spiritually prepared. So that A, you spiritually respond to everything appropriately, mm-hmm. and B, so that in the end, everything's going to be okay mm-hmm. because mm-hmm. you're spiritually prepared. And so I think preparedness is really important. That's the word you use. You have to accept the reality of the world. You have to be prepared that is the reality, and then you as an individual have to be mentally emotionally, physically, and spiritually prepared.
Awesome. So off the cuff, let's break those down.
Yeah.
Let's break them down. Just you're I'm in on this game with you. Let's talk about mentally.
Yeah.
Like in order to be mentally prepared for conflict, for chaos, for black swan, for terrible events, for terrorist attack, terrible things. Like what would you do now? Like what would you put into practice for the rest of 2025? Let's just say crystal ball and something terrible is going to happen in 2026. How would you prepare yourself mentally if you had this, call it a 3-month runway to get ready for it?
Well, I'm gonna kick the question back to you. I've got answers, but right now you've been popping it up, and I've been knocking. I'm gonna kick it back to you.
Okay, great. So going after mentally. So if I was to think about that, I would mentally I would think about getting up to speed on current events. Get up to speed on what's happening in the world. Really take a good look at your consumption of what you're consuming. When I say consumption mentally, I'm talking about like, what is your day-to-day consumption? Where are you getting your information? Are you questioning it? Is it biased is it completely biased towards a certain area? Are you open to multiple sources of information to bring them in? Are you really creating a solid and good foundation for yourself around current events and what's happening?
Yeah, I call that sound coffin, where people will isolate themselves from anything else. A lot of people call it echo chamber, but I prefer sound coffin because that's the place where thought goes to die.
Yeah. Sound coffin. I like that. Or it's just an echo chamber. I go with echo chamber. I think the dangers that I've seen out there are the regurgitation of confirmation bias. So as you well know, when you go somewhere on your phone and you click on something, it feeds the algorithm that is Jonathan Sams or Jonathan Sanchez. And all of a sudden our algorithm just continues to get fed and fed and fed to the point where we think that what we're seeing on our phone is reality.
Right.
It's reality to us. And it grows that algorithm over time, and it creates a confirmation bias that you become conditioned to that you may not be able to escape over time, which is kind of scary. This is nothing new, and you can watch, any documentary on this that's going to tell you the exact same thing, but there's some danger to it. So what I think about in terms of mentally preparing yourself is challenging what you're seeing, what you're consuming, not only from head up, but from one of our coaches likes to say from neck down. Like, what does it feel like here? Does that feel right to you? You have a consciousness here that helps you understand right from wrong. And does that really feel right to you? Are you open to other conversations with other people that allow your mind to expand?
That doesn't mean that we give up our morality. That's a different issue, right? Our morality is fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I do, and I encourage younger people who are working on developing how to think, is to outline you yourself. Regurgitation. People mistake independent thought and regurgitation. Oh, these are my thoughts. Are they, or are you just saying what you heard someone else say? So take it and outline from point to point to point to point, the logic trail. I find when you write it down and you force yourself into that,
Mm-hmm.
that you will refine your conversation, which makes you a better conversationalist when you talk to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear from me, I go point one, point. You hear me say that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And it also helps you to find the weak points in your own positions.
Mm-hmm.
So you can both refine and correct yourself. And so actually developing your own thoughts. I'm okay using thoughts that people have played into you. There's no reason why you should exist outside of thoughts that are out there.
Right.
But actually challenge yourself to think it through, not just specify it. And like you said, neck down, emotionally respond to it. So stick to your morality, but refine your positions and think about it.
Yep. Check in with yourself on it. Is it true to you? As you go through some of these things or hear some of these things that you're seeing and consuming, it'll create the difference between being reactive to it, like, oh yeah, I'm just like spitting it back out, or being responsive, like really absorbing it, thinking about it, and then utilizing that.
Correct. And so mentally, one of the first steps with me with mentally is similar to what you said. You have to educate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Educate yourself on events, and so that you're knowledgeable. Lots of different people have different intellectual capabilities, but we all have the capability to learn. And so develop yourself. And that means the social environment, the political environment, yes, but not just that. Also learn skills, because if you know skills, then you are safer as a human being and you are able to respond to things.
Mm-hmm.
Also, learn how to communicate with people and about life in general. Because if you're able to do that, then you're able to operate as a human being within this world. And when you are in a crisis moment, then you have to have a toolbox to be able to utilize to address that crisis. If your entire toolbox is based on TikTok, then you are not going to have a lot of tools to be able to address what's going on.
Right.
But if your toolbox is based upon information that comes from your faith, that comes from your life skills, that is refined by others, and you continually build that toolbox, then you will be able to make non-emotional, mental decisions that will get you to destination.
I love the idea of toolbox. I absolutely love it. So a week and a half ago, I happened to be at the Naval Academy, actually, right before this whole thing went down. And I was fortunate enough to go to a Forrestal lecture. They have a Forrestal lecture series. And it was the Secretary of the Navy, Secretary Phelan, who was speaking. And he really talked about how these young men and women are going to be challenged to be open to innovation, change, and the preparedness of what we need to do as AI, as all the technology continues to grow. So he challenged them to create these incredible toolboxes in their own minds, if you will. Through one of the aspects, that I pulled from it was multidisciplinary learning or multidisciplinary thinking. And I absolutely love this. And this kind of caps out our mentally aspect of this, because I love the idea of, you said, educate and then skill development. I reflect on all the things that I've had the opportunity to do in my life, which of course were like, be in the military and be in sales and be in corporate leadership. But along the way, I fell in love with like different passions in my life. I can name like a bunch of surfing was a huge passion of mine. I loved it. I could not when I had any free time, I'd be thinking about surfing or thinking about a wave or thinking about my next board or thinking about how I could get out there or dissecting which way the swells were coming in and whichever area was, watching the surf reports, all this stuff. It's like, when you become passionate about a hobby, you just get into it, or at least I do.
Right.
And so for years, I couldn't wait to get out, and surfing became a thing. And I became okay at it. I wasn't great, but I learned how to catch waves, learned all this cool stuff.
That's part of learning how to learn. That's the skill of learning too, right?
Yeah. So I love that. And then when I moved out of Southern California, I just couldn't do it anymore. I got into woodworking, and woodworking became a huge passion, completely opposite of anything I'd ever done in my life. I was not handy, so I had to learn how to use tools, actually learn just the guts to go into a Home Depot. I know this sounds really silly, but I was young. The guts to go into Home Depot and be able to ask questions and figure out what it is and what types of wood was good for building things and how do you build joints and I started buying books and reading and doing all these things.
I still love that. Learning how tools work, the different things, different woods, how they respond.
Well, I went to workshops, and I went to a huge workshop there in the Navy. And it was really neat because they all had fancy equipment, but I didn't know what I was doing. So I grabbed a mentor, it's probably the only guy in there with all 10 fingers. Most of them had 8 or 9 fingers. No joke. Swear to God. And so he taught me a lot, and it was great to learn. I started building furniture, and I started doing all these things, and I could walk into I could go into Pottery Barn and see that's worth the price, but that's not built properly, or that's built from a different type of wood, or I can see things differently. And from woodworking, I moved out of that area, and I moved to Chicago, got into cycling, and all of a sudden riding road bikes was a big deal. I got on a team and started racing, got into criteriums, and everything was about biking to me. And this goes over the course of.
Good thing you bought a Tour de France bike in 2007 that you would never have to replace.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, never. You never have to replace any technology.
He just did.
I just did. I just bought a new bike. Oh my gosh, I'm in love with it. I'm going back to cycling. But so there was this 5-10 year span of cycling that became my discipline, and watch everything. I got into watching and learning everything about cycling. And this story is taking way too long. From cycling, I into beekeeping, and beekeeping became my passion. I learned all these things about beekeeping, and then I got into golf, of all things, the easiest sport in the world. So, it's like super simple thing to do, and I'm really good at putting. I'm watching our producer Laura right back there. She's just, yeah. Side note, I beat the pants out of her putting, but we won't go there. So, of all these disciplines, like 5 separate passions, probably over the course of 25 years of doing all that. The idea and thought behind it, oftentimes when we do hobbies, when we think about things, we do all this stuff, I'm doing a hobby for myself. It's my free time. I like to paint. I like to draw. I like to learn things. I like to, go after whatever surfing or whatever, mountain climbing, hiking, whatever it may be. You're currently into playing music. That multidisciplinary thinking helps you dissect and see things differently, helps you understand problem sets differently, helps you see the world differently.
Respond to things differently. When you play music, then you have to touch into an artistic side. You write songs, you have to touch into an artistic side. When you ride bikes, then you have to discipline yourself on that. When you work with wood, then you construct things. You have to plan things meticulously, step by step, whether it's furniture or buildings. You have to do that, and all those are skills that translate. And those skills translate between one another. They give you the toolbox necessary to be able to address the real world that's around you.
Yeah, and it goes back to that mental preparedness, where you may think that this is just a skill or a hobby. I like gardening, or I like doing this or that. Man, like gardening is all about planning and understanding all the different angles of your garden. There's so much that goes into every little facet, but it is life expanded when you get deep into it.
I'll give you an example. So we have a small farm, as do you. For years, we've raised animals, cattle and sheep and hogs and goats, rabbits, chickens, everything you can imagine, bees. And people will say, why do you raise animals? You're an attorney. Why do you raise animals? I tell them, I'm not raising animals. I'm raising kids. Because I want to give them the skill set to understand how things work. I want them to have a sense of capability. One of my sayings is the worst gift I can give my kids is a sense of entitlement. The best gift I can give them is a sense of individual capability, that they can take a world that is without and turn it into a world that has things.
Yes.
And so all of these things build your mental ability, your confidence, your capability to address the real world around you.
Yeah. Yep. So let's switch. Let's go into emotionally.
Yep.
Going through the list here: mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. How do we emotionally prepare ourselves for a really bad incident or something that happens? What can we do prior to?
Well, let's start with an allegory.
Okay.
You and I are both sailors. We talk about that way too much. But imagine the captain of a ship that's getting an old ship, a wooden ship.
Back when you were in the Navy, not me.
That's what I told my kids. Yeah. I would generally start a lot of stories. They truly believe that I swung from ropes to opposing ships.
You lit your beard on fire?
Yeah, lit my beard on fire. I already had candles in it. And that captain is standing on the deck, and ahead of him, he sees a storm. Now that captain can panic. His crew will panic. If that captain panics, they'll make bad decisions because they'll be making emotional decisions. But that captain, just like we talked about, is not a man who's going to panic. In fact, he sailed these seas for many years. He understands the storm. He understands the waves. He understands his crew, and he understands his ship. See, those are the mental parts that are mental preparation. But he stands on that deck, and he's not afraid. He's cautious. He's thoughtful. But he sails his ship. He sails it into the storm. He's aware his ship will take damage going through the storm. but the ship was made for this. His crew has been trained for this, and he maintains his emotional stability as he goes into the storm. So as you address things, you get to be the captain who panics and the ship is lost. All is lost. Or you get to be the captain who sails into the storm, knowing his capability with the toolbox necessary, and who controls his emotion so that as different crises arise through that storm, then he's able to thoughtfully address those. He's able to actually utilize that toolbox.
Yeah.
If you panic in the face of crisis, or if you respond overly emotionally, invariably you'll make the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is you have to think about crises ahead of time. Because if you're making decisions in the moment, you'll probably make the wrong decision. You have to plan it out ahead of time so that you yourself are programmed to make the right decision.
Yep. There's a bit. So 3 thoughts came up for me. There's a bit of preparedness. Like if you think about, and I'm not going into the big, if we go down the prepper rabbit hole, that'll go really wild. But if you have this understanding in reality, again, like we started with, the world is the world. It's never been this utopia. It's never been perfect. Certain incidents will expose us to the darker parts of the world, which we're currently going through right now in America. But thinking about it from a preparedness standpoint, yeah, like if you think about like, hey, there's something that could happen to your home, right? Like there's an intruder. If you mentally walk through what you would do if an intruder came in, and then you rehearse a couple of those things, whatever it may be, and I'm not going political on this, however you want to defend your home is up to you. You are in a way better mental space. You're in a way better, you can be a more emotionally sound should something happen, because you've already practiced and prepared these. They did these studies with folks who were going through massive trauma incidents, like somebody has a heart attack on the floor, somebody has a stroke and all stuff. And the reason why 911 was developed is because people couldn't remember to dial the police number.
Right.
But even so, after even 911, it was physically hard for people to make the connection to dial 911 because they had never really thought about it, never really practiced it. It's like you go to the phone and you pick up the phone. It was hard to make that emergency call because they were shocked into this state.
Yeah, and that's a real thing. The shock of the moment is the mental shock. I'm not just talking about like the physiological shock.
Right.
I'm talking about the mental shock when suddenly you're faced with crisis. That will prevent you from responding. It will prevent you from responding well. It will cause you to deny reality. Yeah.
Well, you can see if you walk ever, and I hope nobody has this happen to them, but I've been on scenes where people are in shock, where you're looking around and if you're prepared for this, you can see these people are with it. That person's in shock. You need to help them get somewhere or get out of the danger area that we're in. But people their systems can wholly shut down.
I mean, it's a pretty extreme example, but I think it's a real one. What's the last thing? I haven't prepared you for this. I'll just see if, what's the last thing that people will say before they're executed if it's unexpected.
Well, they don't think it's happening, so they say, wait.
That's
they
exactly
right. wait, because they can't process this in its current, and they can't process it in real time. Yeah. And they're just, they need time.
Same thing with shooters. Shooters come into a place that people deny the reality. They always say, "Oh, I thought it was fireworks," or something, a celebration that was going on, but it's not.
Right.
The first thing you have to do is accept the reality of what's going on.
Right. So,
or if you have a cancer diagnosis, which I've had, many times, you have to actually accept it, because you can't address it unless you accept it. You'll resist the treatment. You'll resist the reality. You'll come up with irrational decisions because you're shocked. Right.
I think that goes into it's kind of the same format we're talking about emotionally and mentally, like is to be, it's very Stockdale paradox, like to be understanding that this is the reality. This is what's happening right now. Like a few things that came up for me when we were talking about how to emotionally prepare yourself for things is take the time to work on yourself in the good times, right? Every day. one of my good buddies, Naval Academy friend, graduated with me in class of 95. Has just got his 3rd star as an admiral. Absolute great guy. He's name is John Doherty. He goes by Doc, and he's a really nice, super nice, humble guy. You'd hang out with him, and you wouldn't know that he's in charge of all naval aviation. But we were talking about being emotionally prepared for things, and he said, I was telling him about how, one of my daily practices is meditation. I get up in the morning and I meditate. It's a guided meditation that I do, 10 minutes, 20 minutes sometimes just 5, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes I'm just trying to do it. I'm like, nope, not today. Not today. It's not happening for me. But it's something I do. And I found that I think I'm on my 120th week of this. The little tiny building blocks make it easier for me to kind of have that sense of more calm and understanding, peace. You can't get that like overnight. You can't get that over 1 week. I don't really think you can get it over a year. I think it takes years. But if you spend that 5-10 minutes a day doing something like that, and Doc was saying like he thinks meditation is a superpower. Yeah,
Right.
Here's a guy who's top of the world, literally with aviation and for the Navy, and he's like, man, I believe in it. It's a great thing. He tries to tell his kids, to use. So I think that's one tactical aspect is, think about spending a little bit of quiet time. And most people will tell you, I don't have any time for quiet time. It's like, well, if you dedicate 5 or 10 minutes, you might have a lot more time for quiet time.
Right.
Another part is,
Bible says, be still and know that I am God.
Mm-hmm. I think another part of emotionally too is look and see, well, 2 things. Reflection, go back in your life and think about any major incidents or terrible things that have happened, hard things that have happened. And how did you process those things? Did you do them well, poorly? There's probably not an on-off switch there. It's probably not a yes or no. What, on the spectrum of, I think I really handled that situation well too. Man, I was complete disaster. Don't have much judgment on yourself. Just that's what happened. What could you do personally to make it better? What was it that, you could have done in the moment? If you go back into those terrible moments and reflect like, wow, like I did not respond how I thought I was going to.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in a couple situations where I saw some very dangerous things happen and somebody get hurt really badly. And initially, like I was flat-footed. I just couldn't believe what I was shocked because I was young to seeing things like that. And over time I had to reflect on it and think, okay, next time that happens, I'm going to lean forward into it.
Right.
And next time that happens, I'm going to and so that lady that was falling, like I had seen that many times.
Right.
It was reactive in a good way because it was reflected, responsive, and now it was reactive.
You prepared yourself ahead of time.
Correct. So like getting yourself, into that space. But go back. It's an emotional thing to go back and don't judge yourself on it, but what worked. Also challenge
yourself.
Yeah. I think also challenging yourself on like, do you have have you grown up with a good example of how to react in crisis? And I would say most people did not. But if you were ever part of a crisis and you saw a bunch of people rolling around and you maybe had a parent or somebody or a teacher and they weren't reacting properly, that's probably the model that you're going to fall into.
We learn things.
Probably a learned behavior, right? The thing I go back to all the time is like when if your parents were angry drivers,
right.
It's hard for them to teach you how to be a calm driver, right? Because you grew up in that car with a parent. Now, luckily, mom, dad, you were not angry drivers.
but if
that were true.
So, I mean, so we're talking about leadership, and that's really one of the greatest opportunities for leadership is that when there's crises, the people around you are going to panic. They're not going to know what's going to happen. They may dissipate as an organization or as individuals. They may spread out everywhere. They may become reactive. They probably will. They may not operate. It's up to you to provide that stability. It's up to you if you're going to be a leader. then you need to pull that team together. You need to provide context. And that's true for your own teams at work. That's true for your family. And that's for our society as well, that we need to keep our heads and we need to pull this together. And that's an emotional response. And of course, you have to be mentally prepared to be able to affect that so people will follow you. You have to be able to put together a plan. But you also have to say, wait a second, calm down. We've got this. It's okay.
Yes.
It's part of leadership.
Yep. Oftentimes I hear that people in these crises, things slow down, things really slow down for them. It's a very, Malcolm Gladwell wrote about this as well. It's like the brain's ability to just put put it into slow-mo. Like it's like you can talk about every aspect of everything should it be a very dangerous situation. If somebody were to run in this room and start shooting bullets, we could go back weeks from now and tell you every detail of everything that happened.
No question about
it. Your brain has that ability.
I've been in car accidents that exists still.
Yeah, exactly. Great example. And if we do have the ability to do that, we also have the ability to slow things down and make conscious decisions. And what I learned early in the military was, hey, make a decision with the information that you have. Make the best decision that you can. Move it forward as opposed to sit still. Indecision is a rusty knife.
Right. Terrible.
Indecision makes a jagged, awful cut. So make a decision. You could be right. You probably are because you're mentally a little bit better prepared than everybody else. Could be wrong. That's okay. Move it forward. You have the ability to flex on that decision and keep moving forward. All right, 2 more. Let's get into physically. This one will hit home for you because obviously you physically prepare for every day. Having gone through cancer 4 times and beat cancer 4 times. Whoop, whoop. Not today, Satan. Let's go. I know it's a big part of your routine. You know, if I ever want to feel bad about myself, I just call Jonathan Sams, ask you how you worked out today, how hard you worked out, how long.
Okay, heart rate 185 today.
Yeah, I almost killed myself today. I'm just trying to keep up. That's all I'm trying to do. But I think this one's not too hard to get into. Like, how do you? Because everybody has their own routines. Physical preparedness is part of being prepared for big events.
That's right.
Right.
One thing about cancer, I say, is in order to be cured, you have to survive it, which means you have to be physically prepared to be able to handle the disease itself and the treatments of the disease. And so sensitively, but I'll talk about it. I had a long-term friend just over a year ago who was diagnosed with leukemia. He went into the same hospital ward that I went into. He looked at what I was wearing. He looked at what I was doing and said, okay, I'm going to do that too. And he sent his wife out to go purchase actually what I wore in the hospital, same stuff. And they started doing chemotherapy and he died right there. Because the time to prepare physically is before the crisis. It's not during the crisis. And so everyone thinks that bad things aren't going to happen or challenging things aren't going to happen. I won't even call them bad. I'll say challenging things aren't going to happen to you. Could be bad, but challenging things are going to happen. And you need to be physically prepared at all time. You need to be prepared on all these areas at all time because you have to be, you said it before, you prepare before the crisis, not in the crisis. Now, if you're in the crisis, it's still not an excuse not to develop yourself. You still have to do so. But you have to be physically strong. You have to get enough rest. You have to be, your cardiovascular system has to be strong. And these 4 areas are like parts of a chain. So you have mental preparedness and emotional preparedness and physical preparedness and spiritual preparedness. And the chain is going to break on the weakest one. And so a lot of times people say, well, I'm going to develop the mental and emotional and spiritual, but really not the physical. That's one of the links of this chain. And it will break. If you are faced with crisis, that physical side will break. Even if it's not a disease, it may be something, the loss of a loved one. Well, that could be keeping you awake at night. And that's going to tax you physically. You may stop eating for a period of time. That's going to tax you physically. So all these things will reduce you if you're not prepared. So you have to be strong physically. Your cardiovascular system has to be strong, and you have to rest. Listen to your body when it's time to rest, then rest. And after the crisis, you're going to find yourself depleted. And when you're depleted, then you have to rebuild. Then you have to rebuild smart, but you have to rebuild.
Mm-hmm. It is such a great topic with you because you are a living example of physically preparing yourself for crisis, right? Having survived cancer 4 times and pretty much through every decade of your life, right?
Right.
So you always had to sleep with a lion in bed. Now, I really believe in holistic, like you do, right? The way that you line up the links, I did believe it's completely like holistic. When we do our executive coaching and everything, we tell people you're just not one person at work, and then you go home and you're somebody else. You are connected in so many ways and so many facets to this world. And our coaches are really trained in bringing that out and helping them see the goodness in that. Physical is a great part of that, right? And we know that if we work out for 20 plus minutes, then things happen physically inside our bodies that create endorphins and then help our system regenerate, and helps with creativity and thought and all these things. Going back to like COVID, like none of us can say that COVID won't happen again. It could be happening right now.
An external crisis that came out of nowhere that taxed people physically,
right?
Mentally, emotionally, spiritually.
Taxed us all, and we all went through different things. Some people got in better shape during COVID. Some people got in worse shape. Some people drank too much, ate too much, all that stuff. But when you're going through a crisis, it doesn't have to be like a crisis like big terrorist event, but it could be like a long pull like COVID was on the entire world. Not to mention that, or just to mention that like it hurt or it took away people that were not physically fit. It was one of those things that really.
Well, those who weren't physically prepared were not always. Always. We always have to recognize, be compassionate to the fact that it took others too.
That's right.
But one of the telling factors was how physically prepared you were.
Yeah, it's part of it. So, I also believe that it is time to build during the good times.
Right.
It's time to build when you're leading. It's time to build a relationship when things are rolling with your team and things are going well. That's the time to really challenge them. That's the time to put them through, like, I want you to do more. I see more out of you. I can build this. When they're going through a really difficult time, that's not the time to overly challenge. That's time to be there for them and to work. Same with your body. Same deal. When things are clicking and you're feeling good, go a little bit more, go another rep, go another interval. I recently had an experience this summer where my son came home from college. He's same college that I went to, Naval Academy, and he was working out, and I was just watching him going, geez, that's scary to watch because he's a D1 wrestler and he's just killing it, just crushing all these weights and everything. And I decided, yeah, man, I'm in, let's go. And he was kind enough to say, all right, Dad, here I am 30 years older than him. And I got humbled, but I recognized and realized that I knew how to really work out at a very high level 30 years ago. And then that went into, 10, 15 or 20 years ago, I'd say it's kind of top of the game in terms of like understanding all of what's out there. But he was showing me new things, obviously, clearly over 30 years, 20 years. Things have drastically changed in lifting weights and cardio and rest and diet and all those things. And, I admit, I just thought I knew. I thought I knew,
Well, you did know from what was there, right?
Yeah.
And what worked for you.
But
now, I mean, they've applied so much science to musculature and
so much
athleticism. And I mean, that's why we break records every year, is because we understand ourselves better.
Right. And to do the things, so he, just over the course of about 5 weeks, he was having me do things that if I had done them by myself or hadn't applied new methodology, I would have gotten hurt, no doubt about it. But to do all the warm-ups and in the activity, muscle activation, all the things and the stretching and all the things and the hydration, all that goes into it. Now I'm able to do all those things, and it drastically changed. So it's just a word of encouragement to everybody. Like, you might have your own routines. That's cool. You're staying in shape. That's great. But look at me. I was a military Olympian. I won 2 gold medals. I never ever talk about that. It's the first time I've mentioned that on this podcast. Yeah, all those things. But now I'm like, oh my gosh, I learned so much from just my son, who was right underneath me the whole time. So there's a lot to learn. Stay on it, and it's really fun. Like, if you get back in shape, it can be really fun.
I'm going to hit that, and I think actually in some ways, we might owe our audience a little apology on this one too. Because you're a Navy SEAL. I've stayed at this for years. I break down, have kind of an interesting physical story. Look, let me say this too, and start from where you're at. Every one of us, me too. Start on the dot to dot of any objective. Mm-hmm. We all start at 0. We all start at 0. So don't be upset that you're on 0. Be upset if you don't begin to pursue the path, right?
Get to 1.
And so believe me, I've been at 0. Yeah, exactly. Go from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2. Believe me, I've been at 0. I was at 0 2 years ago. I lost 40 pounds because of pancreatic cancer. I lost musculature. My lung collapsed. My diaphragm collapsed. I've had to start from 0. But you know what? You can do it. I have faith in you. You can do this. Take this part seriously. Start by walking. Start by breathing. Start by doing a little weightlifting. Rule number 1: don't get hurt. If you hurt yourself, you're going to set yourself back. And don't think that either John or myself are on a different line than you are. We're on exactly the same line. We just started at 0 at a different point. And in my case, I had to restart from 0. But you got this. You can do this. And so prepare yourself physically and start from where you're at. Don't try to be at any place otherwise. I'll be proud of you if you soberly accept where you're at and then just begin to work on it and develop.
Yeah, such a good point. I've watched you navigate that at a much smaller and insignificant level. I broke my foot, failed superhero landing, broke my foot in October, and it took me out of the game for 2 or 3 months, and it was really hard. But
didn't you jump off a car?
I did.
Yeah,
I jumped. Yeah, it was excellent, and it literally says on my medical record, failed superhero landing. So I'm really proud of that. Deadpool, actually. So the thing about that,
I tripped over my dog and broke my leg once.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
That is, I'm probably a couple of years away from doing that. Poor dog. But it's wild because, one, like when I went into the hospital with that broken foot, I had been working out a lot. This is just like I built up this, physical presence. So when I had to hobble around, you have to get up in the middle of the night with a broken foot. It's an athletic event to try to get to the toilet. You're moving. You have to get your crutches. You have to do this. You have to go up and down stairs. Your other leg has to be in great shape. So going back to it, staying in shape physically. This is the third aspect of what we're talking about: how to prepare for crisis. How do you prepare for terrible events that may happen to you? Think about for a second when all those people went up to the towers in September 11th. Did they know that they were going to have to take the stairs down? Did they know that day, if they were on whatever floor they were on, they had to go down that many flights of stairs? None of them knew that.
Some of them stopped, some of them didn't.
Yeah, some of them couldn't. So there may be events, and I pray that you are not part of that. But if you are part of something like that if you are part of like what my son just went through, like a school shooter lockdown type thing, you have to move, and you have to move relatively, with expediency to move from one place to another because you're in physical danger.
I had to jump into a whirlpool to save my 3-year-old daughter that was going to take us over a waterfall.
Yeah.
You have to be physically prepared because you don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Just be prepared, be ready. and build that up. And by the way, we're talking about it's probably one of my favorite things to do is to do the physical part of my day. Just try to stay in shape. Okay, let's move on to our last piece is spirituality. I would say this one's easy for me. Get a mentor. I got one. Jonathan Sams. The Mike Kelly. People around you that make you better, but also help you, and not to get too far down into. And we respect all religions, right? We respect, like, well, you've studied all different religions, and your family is
in ministry,
pretty much, and your life is ministry. You've proven it through your ministry is law that you help others through. How do we prepare spiritually for things like this? Because it is the fourth component of this. It is an aspect, and I think about it in terms of serving or helping others. When you're in this mindset of going through crisis, that some people will be very challenged spiritually about this. Why did this happen? How could this happen? There is no God, right? There is this is, people can go down that or shut down their lives. And I'm thinking about it more from how do we be there for people? And maybe we can answer through both sides of how do we prepare ourselves, and then how do we prepare ourselves to help others?
I think you can't be there for people unless you know who you are. Mm-hmm. And so these other items, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, is to what end? Mm-hmm. Why? Mm-hmm. Right? Why are we doing these things? Why do our lives matter at all? What's the purpose of pursuing mm-hmm. these? So the first part of being spiritually prepared is to contextualize yourself within the meaning of the universe, within the created universe. Mm-hmm. Why am I here? Is it to win political hearts? Is it to consume, to eat as much, to own as much, to make a lot of money? There are a lot of executives out there and a lot of people out there who go out and they say, I've made a lot of money, but I'm still dissatisfied. Mm-hmm. My family isn't happy. I'm not happy. Why have I done this? Why have I worked so hard to check the boxes that everyone else told me to check, and I am dissatisfied? You have to know who you are. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to contextualize yourself spiritually. And then when you talk to others, you can't assist others in who they are until you begin to understand who you are. It doesn't mean you have to have the perfect answers, but you should be in pursuit of that, so that you're operating for a reason. You're making decisions for a reason. When you respond to a crisis or an opportunity, mentally, emotionally, physically, where are you going to go? Why? Where are you taking this ship that you've worked hard to control? And the people around you, where are you going to lead them? I think you can answer those. And then finally, if you've contextualized yourself well, then you're also not afraid, because at the end that everything's going to be okay. You have eternal mm-hmm. promises. Mm-hmm. You're an eternal being that's here for a purpose, mm-hmm. created by God in God's own image. And so be comfortable and live out your role as to who you are for the proper purposes. So when Charlie Kirk gets assassinated, do you lose your head? Do you try to win an argument? Do you try to demean others? Or do you examine who you are spiritually and who they are spiritually, and help and become a voice that helps to calm, helps to guide others to where they need to be, and helps us as a society and us as organizations. How do we become restorative? And I've got some examples on that too, but I'll come to this in a minute.
Mm-hmm. No, go ahead. I think it's great.
So I have friends who are very politically different than I am, and they're vociferous, but I don't engage them in those kinds of debates, because they are more important to me, far more important to me than the issue at hand. And I can't, just like our ... 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I may be at a different spot on that, or I may be on a different line, but I can't force them to where we are, to where I am, but I can love them. Also, the saying is you win hearts and minds. You don't defeat hearts and minds. You win them, and you win them with compassion and love. There's far too little encouragement in the world. And so, taking the opportunity to help others in crises, help them develop into who they need to be, develop the relationships you need with them, and being reliable. So my friends, even though we're very different, they know they can rely on me, and I will always be there for them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the first part. The second part of it is that when you lose people who have been speaking or who have been leading, that throws you into crisis. And I'm going to use an example that happened yesterday that we were talking about before with the Bengals football game.
Mm-hmm.
We have a great quarterback, Joe Burrow. We pay a lot of money for him, and he really is one of the greats of all time. But before he was injured, his offensive line was crumbling around him, play after play. The defense was not stepping up to the plate. They were not putting pressure on the other team. But after he was injured and taken out of the game, then Browning came in. And he's a good quarterback. He is a good quarterback. I like him. I'm glad he's our backup quarterback. But you saw something far more than a backup quarterback come in. You saw a team that came together. You saw a team that suddenly they realized that every single individual mattered. And everyone says, where is our hero? Where is our hero? I have to tell you, you're the hero. And so the opportunity is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just look to others.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I love to watch a leader step up in situations like that. It's a great way to kind of cap off where we are today. Like, I love watching people step into leadership. And a good example is, it's fun. Sports are always just a great example to use because there's just like very physical, but good and bad. There's all kinds of good and bad behavior in sports, but watching anybody step up, and you recognize and realize they've been mentally thinking about this moment their whole lives. They're excited to be in that pocket. They're excited to step into whatever realm that they are because they have prepared their entire lives. They're a professional athlete too. They stepped into this. I like watching documentaries, and I like watching like these cool 30 for 30s and all this thing. And you get to hear the person go back and reflect on the big moment. The moment where they had to take that shot, the moment where they had to like hit that golf ball that had to be close to the pin in order to win the big whatever, irrelevant of what it is. But oftentimes you will hear them say, couldn't wait for that shot. I couldn't wait to get that ball. I couldn't wait to hit that ball. I could not wait. I had been waiting for that moment. I had visualized, I had thought about it. I had prepared for it. It was my time, stepping into it, because that's where they had prepared themselves for, thought about it. So of all the aspects that we've talked about, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, one thing that I have also noticed, and it goes to your starting from, physically from 0 to 1. If you don't feel like you're spiritually aligned or ready or all that stuff, understand that like most people don't. Most people really feel challenged by it. Even people who are very spiritual, because it's a very difficult thing sometimes to feel like you're like on, like it almost feels righteous if you think that I am like completely spiritually aligned. It is a challenge all the time, just like it is to be mentally, physically, or emotionally aligned. So, have patience with yourself,
right,
when you go through that process of all 4 of those things that we talked about. The one that I've seen grow out of crisis more than all the other 3, it would be spiritually.
Agreed.
Right? That some people use crisis as opportunity, that the one that can be born out of crisis is a higher spirituality. We like to say there's no atheist in a firefight.
Right.
You don't see an atheist in a foxhole next to you. That's the time where you're believing in And that's okay no matter where you are on that journey. Last thoughts, Mr. Sams, before I buy you a great big sushi boat to celebrate another day in the life with you.
Yeah, just, today we're going through some societal challenges. Remember who you are, and use this as an opportunity. Use this as an opportunity to be a leader in your community, a leader in your family, a leader in your organizations. Calm things down, not so you can make more money, but because we need you as leaders. Set people on set a good example, set yourself first, and then encourage others to be on a stable path that loves everyone around them. Remember to support your morality, but to have a lot of compassion for those around you. That's what I'll say. Use this as an opportunity. Crises are always an opportunity, and this is the opportunity to make the world better.
Yeah. Well, nobody says it better than my spiritual mentor on that one, so I'm going to leave it perfectly at that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this is a very different Next Level podcast. Normally we're focusing on, I guess it's not so different, but we really I like the idea that we're delving into and confronted and addressing the reality that's out there. And we, in line with what we do, and the idea of Next Level is it helps you get to the next level, helps your team get to the next level, helps you get to the next level, whatever that may be for you, that you can hopefully utilize this, think about it, reflect on it, and use it throughout the rest of your life. Hopefully that crisis doesn't come straight to your door, but no doubt there will be crisis in the future. And we hope this helps you prepare for it. So, Mr. Sams, thank you, sir.
Thanks, John.
It has been an honor as always, and we look forward to seeing everyone else on the next level. Or I'm sorry, I was seeing you next time on the next level. And thank you so much for joining us.